We've got a lot to talk about this morning on our weekly segment with the Prime Minister, Chris Hipkins. Morena, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here. You were just talking to me about Gisborne. Obviously, there's been more flooding there overnight. You're aware of a number of families that have had to be evacuated.
Yeah, so I've been notified that there were 15 families overnight added to the list of those staying in emergency evacuation centres. There are likely more families as well, though, because many people, when they're evacuated, will go and stay with friends and relatives, and I don't have a firm number on that.
We're going to talk about looting this morning, amongst other things like Three Waters. With the looting situation, and particularly in Hawke's Bay and Gisborne, were you gaslighting people there?
No, absolutely not. I think, and look, I regret that one of the comments that I made was taken to be questioning the authenticity of what people were saying, and I do regret that.
Because you said there was no first-hand account of people pulling guns on road workers. Right. The road workers have then spoken to media saying actually they did give first-hand accounts days earlier to police.
Yeah.
Did police tell you about that or not?
No, so the information that I had from the police at that point was clearly incorrect.
So are you disappointed that the police commissioner has given you incorrect information?
Well, of course, but I mean, I suspect that's because he was obviously given incorrect information.
Is that a worry for you, that you're getting incorrect intelligence from our police?
Well, I think the overall message here is we've got 145 extra police on the ground in the Hawke's Bay area at the moment because we are concerned and because we want to make sure that the community feels safe and that any reports of looting or extra crime are being investigated and are being clamped down on.
But you're not even being told about them, though. That's the problem, isn't it?
Well, in that particular case, the intel that we got was wrong.
So do you apologise to the people who had a gun pulled on them, who you denied was a first-hand account?
Oh, look, absolutely. I regret the fact that intel that I had was incorrect at that point. But let's also be clear here. The question at the time was whether we should have the military basically replacing the police in some of these instances. Actually, the police are still the best people to do this. The best answer, which is the answer that they have landed on, is to bring more police staff in from across the country.
Sure. Do you regret saying that blaming people for amplifying those rumours that weren't helpful? First of all, what rumours were you referring to? Well,
there are even rumours out there now which are not stacking up and proving to be correct. Like the fact that there was an allegation that the Gun City had been ram-raided and that everyone had stolen the guns and they were now on the streets. That simply didn't happen. Okay. It simply isn't true. So I just think people just need to be a little careful about making sure that where things have actually happened, that they're reporting those to the police, because this is the police's job.
Yourself included?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. All right, let's move on then, talk about the Rob Campbell situation. So he's obviously the chair of Te Whatu Ora Health New Zealand, very important job, and it's slightly contentious because it's a new big agency that's been set up, right? So you want this guy to be as neutral as possible, and he's said these comments about the National Party, etc. Has Aisha Verrill spoken to him yet? Have you heard from him?
My understanding is that those conversations have been taking place over the last 24 hours. Now, someone in a position like that is expected to act in a way that allows them to work with a future government, even if it's not the same government as the current government. There's a code of conduct in place. I think his comments step outside the code of conduct. So that now is a matter that the ministers are taking up with him.
So what's he said to your minister?
I haven't actually heard how the conversation has gone. I understand that conversation took place at some point last night. OK.
Do you know whether there was any conversation had when he came out and supported a Green Party MP's bill?
Yes, my understanding that there was a conversation about that.
OK, so this is the second conversation that a minister has had to have with him over his comments and political neutrality.
Yes.
2 strikes, you're out?
Look, as you will imagine, there's a process that you have to follow here, and that doesn't involve me making, arbitrary decisions live on air. But clearly, I think, some of the comments that he has made fall outside the bounds of what we would expect for someone in that kind of position.
Would you prefer to be someone else there?
Look, again, I'm not going to make those judgments. I know you'd love a scoop, but I'm not going to make those judgments live on a television program. That wouldn't be fair, and it wouldn't be appropriate.
OK, fair enough. Is there a problem with the people that you guys are selecting for these roles? Because this role is appointed by a minister, right? A Labor minister?
Yes,
the chairman?
It's appointed by government.
So we've got that role. We've also got, when you set up the Polytech merger, the boss there quit within months of taking the job, was on some kind of special leave, great controversy, $13,000 a week being paid. Do you have a bad track record on this?
Well, that wasn't an appointment that I made. So that was a chief executive appointment made by the board. The board, of course, are still there. They're still in place.
And who appoints the board?
I appointed the board in that case.
Okay. So is there a problem, I ask you again, with your appointments?
Well, like I said, the board are still there. I have confidence in that board. There wasn't a problem with the board. There has been some turnover amongst the senior management in the team, which of course is not great. It's not ideal.
Yeah, and now again, there's issues with the boss of the new agency, Health New Zealand. So is there a problem?
Well, again, that is a question of a board appointment. So that is a board appointment made by the government. So therefore, any changes to that are matters for the government. But again, you have to follow an appropriate process there.
Okay, Cyclone Gabrielle, do we yet know what the bill will be for the rebuild of everything? Grant Robertson was hinting at around $13 billion. What have officials given you as an estimate at this point?
It's massive. So I wouldn't want to put a different figure out there to the one the Minister of Finance has been using. To some extent, we don't know. And that is because, to some extent, we don't know what we can and can't do yet in terms of the rebuild. So if you think about silt, it may be that some of those areas can be cleaned up. It may be that there are some areas where we just can't clean them up because of the volume of silt that we're talking about. We don't know that yet. So we've still got all of that work to do.
So what estimates have officials given you? Is it around that $13 billion as well?
Oh, it'll be in the billions. But again, just keep in mind that there are different contributors to that. So not all of that would be government funding. You know, there'll be a lot of insurance money flowing into the region as well. There'll be private sector investment. You know, people won't build back exactly as they have before. They might do things differently, and that'll involve private sector investment. It's going to be a very big number, though.
Okay, a big number, billions of dollars. We've got to pay for it somehow, and everyone's asking about the tax or what are you going to do, and you're not going to say yet. What about Three Waters? How much has Three Waters cost the government so far? Well,
if you look at the overall level of investment required over the next 30 years, we're talking about $130 to $180 billion, the estimates of what we need
it cost you so
for
far?
The pipes and so on.
What's Three Waters cost you so far?
I don't have a number of how much has been spent on the reform program so far. I can certainly find that out. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Do you know how much you've committed to spend on it?
There's $2 billion in what we're calling better off funding, which we've committed to. So that's funding to make sure that where the Three Waters reform disrupts the regular day-to-day business of councils, that they're not left worse off as a result of that. So there's $2 billion of funding committed to that already.
There's $500 million in funding to make sure that no councils go backwards financially as well.
So that's part of the $2 billion that I just mentioned.
$34 million for developing and selling the plan has already been spent. That was up until May 2021. So we're talking billions of dollars here. Not sure how much of it is spent yet, as you've said. Is it the right thing to be pushing ahead with these reforms when we're going to have a bill to pay for fixing the very infrastructure that we're trying to future-proof?
Well, in many cases, they're one and the same thing. So if you look at the water infrastructure in those affected areas, it hasn't stood up. And actually, it is exactly the same debate.
So shouldn't we be fixing that first before we look at making reforms and creating new entities, which is costing hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars?
Well, the question is, how do we do it the most efficient way possible? And how do we make sure that we're actually delivering the first world water infrastructure that those communities deserve? This recent event, so the last few weeks, has highlighted we don't have the water infrastructure that New Zealand communities need.
I agree.
Fresh water was cut off. Wastewater ended up, you know, the plants and the treatment facilities simply did not cope with what we've experienced. And let's not get started about stormwater. Clearly, we've got massive work to do there.
Completely agree with you. The problem is we don't have infinite money, right? So this is about priorities, and what are you going to prioritise? So either you're going to have to borrow, which the Reserve Bank says will be inflationary. You're going to have to tax, which, let's face it, a lot of people won't be happy with, or you're going to have to cut something, and you're going to have to cut something big. So are you committed to making any changes to Three Waters to save some of this money to spend upfront on infrastructure?
But that is exactly what the water infrastructure changes we're making is designed to do. It's designed to save money. It's designed to save money. This work has to be done in the next 30 years. If we don't intervene to do it more efficiently, ratepayers are going to pay, and they're going to pay in the form of higher rates. So this is about making sure that we're doing it as efficiently as possible. This money has to be spent.
Yes,
so
but not tomorrow.
Well, no, but we're not talking about tomorrow. We're talking about putting a structure in place that will allow for a 30-year investment in water infrastructure so that we get the sort of investment that we need. In terms of paying for the rebuild, though, you know, the natural disasters that we have just experienced, we're well positioned there. We've got relatively low levels of debt compared to the, you know, other countries that we compare ourselves to.
Then you've got inflation, though, right?
We have got inflation, but the level of government spending from the COVID peak is actually trending down. So we're already having a negative effect on inflation in terms of government spending, in the sense that our spending is trending down. That helps to bring down inflation. So that gives us choices.
But if you start spending more, then you reverse that situation, don't you? That's the problem.
Well, it depends what else you're doing as well. So it's not a simple equation. You have to look at the overall level of government spending. You've got to look at private sector spending and where that weighs into this as well, because bearing in mind a lot of the rebuild is going to be funded through insurance payments, as it was after the Canterbury earthquakes.
The subsidy on petrol and public transport, is that something that's coming off in June? I think it's due to, you haven't made any promises beyond June. Are you looking at that as a way to potentially raise some revenue to pay for the infrastructure issues?
The money that gets raised through petrol tax goes into the Land Transport Fund, which pays for roads, in order to reduce the levy that people are paying, or what they're paying at the pump. We have subsidised that, so we've put extra money in. So that money's still going into roading, it's just coming from the Crown rather than coming from petrol tax. We haven't made decisions beyond June. That'll be part of the budget process.
Is that something, though, that you are actively considering, instead of basically giving people that subsidy, that you would use that for the rebuild?
One of the things that we're looking at in the round, in the budget process, is just the general cost of living pressure that people are facing at the moment, and how best government can support them.
So what trumps?
There's a range of options, but I'm not going to write the budget here. Obviously, the fuel tax discounts, that's one of the things that we've been able to do to help people. There are other things as well, and we'll consider all of them on the table through the budget process.
All right, Prime Minister, thank you very much for coming in. Great to see you as always. That is Chris Hipkins, the Prime Minister, for his regular Tuesday interview here on AM.